This is another sketch that really renders as a sketch literal wording, saying you first can see it from there, then you can see it here, and so on and so forth, as the planet returns. There were even discoveries of astronomical records. These are called astrolabes because they depict the circular heavens around Earth on plain paper with all the stars being named, where the progression of Nibiru from being seen in this part of the heavens to being seen in this part of the heavens at its apogee, its perigee, is actually recorded as having been witnessed and seen by Assyrian and Babylonian astronomers. Well, this is one of the texts accompanying one of the astrolabes. And as becomes obvious as you study all these texts, that the main feature they are talking about is a day of darkness, darkness at noon, the sun will not be seen, etc., which we can say they are really talking about the solar eclipse. And the Assyrian records, I think that's what I showed in the previous slide, talk about a darkness at noon and an eclipse at an unexpected time, because all these eclipses could be predicted. They had enough knowledge to predict solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, etc. So in exactly 556 BC, and this is a sketch, a sky map prepared by NASA, not by me, in 556, an unusual and unexpected eclipse, darkness at noon, took place. And it is my conclusion in the book, The End of Days, that is exactly when Nibiru last was near Earth and created that eclipse. So if you go back to the problem posed by 2012, and you say, well, 2012 is when Nibiru is expected to return and do this or do that, and be a good omen or bring harmful things, will be the apocalypse, the end. It does not work, because the last time that Nibiru was near Earth was 556 BC, and if it has an orbit of about 3,600, 3,400, 3,500 years, it ain't coming back in 2012. So what might happen, if not in 2012, in some other time, in our lifetimes perhaps? And this takes me to the other part of the biblical prophecies, where I told you that there were really two things that were discussed and prophesied. From about 750 BC to about 550 BC, the time of Ezekiel, they spoke about the day of the Lord, the celestial Lord. It's coming, it's nearing, it's coming from the south, it will darken the skies, etc., etc. But then the other part, they switched to a term called Acharit Yamim, the end of days, which some translate end time or any other way people want to translate. But the time, the question is, what do we mean by time? But whatever we call time will come to an end. And we have to remember, and this is the purpose of this slide to show you, that the Anunnaki were coming and going between their planet and the Earth, not necessarily when Nibiru was closest to Earth. As a matter of fact, they could not do that, because it is at this point that the planet, their planet, that slows down here, gains speed, and moves fastest around the sun. So the only way they could come here was if they left their planet ahead of time and speeded ahead of the planet and were here and then rejoined their planet, or when the planet was starting on the way back to slow down, then they would, as if literally, fall back towards the sun and come to our vicinity. So there were all kinds of ways, and there are tales. There are tales about this god, this goddess. There is a tale about a king called the Tana who was taken to heaven. He was afraid to continue the trip, and he started to see the earth become smaller and smaller. There was one of the sons of Enki by an earthling woman called Adapa, who was taken for a visit with Anu in heaven, taken and brought back. So he did not stay 3,600 years on Nibiru. So comings and goings are possible even when Nibiru is not precisely at its closest to us. And what did happen in 556 BC, when so many of the other nations expected the Anunnaki to show up again, is that instead of showing up, they left. I don't have the slides here, and I'm not intending to spend more time because I'm way beyond my time already. But in the book, I suggest that the point of departure was the famous Nazca lines in South America. But what is without doubt known, and this is perhaps part of the Mayan prophecies, is that the chief deity of Mesoamerica, whom the Aztecs called Quetzalcoatl, the Mayan called Kukulkan, which all meant the plumed or the winged serpent. Before he left, he said, and this is written down, he said, "I will return, I promise to return." And he promised to return at a certain point, which is related to the Mesoamerican calendars. Now, the so-called Mayan calendar, where the whole business of 2012 appears, is really a calendar called the Long Count, which was started not by the Mayas, was started by the Olmecs, people from Africa who were brought over by Quetzalcoatl, that I identified as the Egyptian god Thoth, were brought over in 3113 BC. And this is the calendar that the Mayas used. The whole business of 2012 is based because the calendar, its various symbols depict 1 day or 20 days or 360 days, etc. And this is called this one is called the Bakhtun, and 13 Bakhtuns will culminate in, by some calculation, 2012. Now, it depends how one calculates, because it depends if you divide the days by 365 or by 360. One way that has been suggested only a century ago really arrives at 2087 as the Mayan 13th Baktun. But in general, my feeling is that it is not applicable at all, because if you follow the biblical prophecies, they are dealing with a cyclical timetable. This so-called Mayan calendar is a linear one, like day 1, day 2, day 3, etc. The same as the AD calendar, 2000, 2001. Why nothing happened 2000? Because after 2000 came 2001. Like I showed you at the beginning, that some said 2000, then said 2003, 2000. All the predictions in the Bible, both the Old Testament and the New Testament, speak of a cycle. The beginning will be the ending. The ending is the beginning. The past is the future. And this can take place only in a cyclical thing. And what was is more quotes of the same subject about the end of days and what will happen there. Now, the best clues in the Old Testament about this whole business of the end of days, when will it be, not only what will happen, but when will it be, is in the book of Daniel. I just almost skipped fast because it takes too long to start reading all that. But one of those that really devoted the better part of his life to studying the meaning of the prophecies and the timetable given in the book of Daniel. And there's some number of years, but the best clue is where the angels tell Daniel the end of days will come after half time, and 2 times. And Daniel, like we say, what do you mean by that? What half time are you talking about? I'm not talking about football, right? And he was left with no answer. So Sir Isaac Newton, who is known more about celestial orbits and such other things, spent most of his time delving into those prophecies and trying to calculate them. And a handwritten document by him came to light relatively recently, 2-3 years ago. And when it came to light, the news headlines were that Sir Isaac Newton calculated the end of days at 2100 AD, 2160 AD. I was fortunate to be able to obtain a photocopy of that handwritten page, which is written front and back. In the book, The End of Days, I give what it says. I quote what it says. I do not show the photographs because I have no permission to do that. So you are now seeing, you are the first ones to see the photograph of the handwritten document by Sir Isaac Newton. And he calculated also in 3 ways. And the number 2160 does indeed feature heavily in his calculations. But when I looked at his calculations on the back of the page, I said, oh my God, he's talking about zodiacal times. Because one of the things, again, a so-called Sumerian first, was the devising of the zodiac, of calculating how the Earth, on the first day of spring here, after a full year, does not precisely return to where it was, but is slightly retarded. The retardation amounts to 1 degree of 360 in 72 years, and a 30-degree zodiacal house, therefore 30 times 72 is 2,160. So the mathematical zodiacal time is 2,160 years. And there's no doubt, though, the beginning of the zodiac is attributed to the Greeks, that the Sumerians knew it. They named all the 12 zodiacal constellations in the correct order. This is all Sumerian names. They depicted them the way we still use to this day. So there's no doubt that they knew the zodiacal times. But again, as with other things, how could they? How could any immortal Sumerian not only measure the delay of 1 degree in 72 years, but of 30 degrees of the shift from one zodiacal house to another in 2,160 years? And the answer is that, again, this was an Anunnaki device and not a Sumerian device. And what is important to keep in mind is that the time scale, so that's perhaps when the ancients told Daniel time, half time, 2 times, that they were talking about divine time, the Anunnaki time, is because I ask myself, and I give that answer also in the book, The End of Days, is what prompted, what caused the Anunnaki in 2024 BC to resort to the use of nuclear weapons? What was the problem? And the problem was that Marduk said that the age of the bull, the age of Taurus, which was the age of Enlil, is ending, he said, and my age, the age of the ram, the age of Aries, is beginning. He claimed that this is the correct zodiacal scale. So he said around 2200 BC, the age of Enlil, the age of Taurus, has ended, and my age, the age of Aries, has begun. The others, and this is all in those texts, by the way, the others said to him, no, you are wrong, because don't go by some chart. Look at the heavens. In the heavens, on the first day of spring, we are still in the age of the bull. We are still in the age of Taurus. Why? Because the three zodiacal constellations of the bull, of the ram, and of Pisces are not the same size. So, though Marduk claimed that his age has already begun, it was still observationally, really in the heavens, the age of Enlil, of his rivals, Ninurta, and so on. So this was such a bitter fight that they resorted to nuclear weapons to deprive each other of the spaceport. Now, there is another cylinder seal. It is at the Hermitage Museum in Russia. There's no doubt about its date. It's 2500 BC. And it shows, in my opinion, without doubt, an astronaut on the 6th planet, which is Mars, greeting an astronaut on the 7th planet, which is Earth. You remember I asked you to keep it in mind, Earth and its moon. And between them, there is a spacecraft. So, a return of the Anunnaki with a stopover on Mars, one greeting the other, has occurred. And there is a date. There is a date on this cylinder seal. Do you see the date? Pisces. The age of Pisces. The age of Pisces. So does this mean that the return of the Anunnaki and the end of days, with its 2,160-year calculation, will still come about this century? Maybe. Because, there is a because, ladies and gentlemen. Because just at the place that, according to the New Testament, is called Armageddon, where the final war will take place, a mosaic floor in the first church ever built in the Holy Land, since the time of Jesus, has on its floor the sign of Pisces. This was discovered 2 or 3 years ago at Armageddon, which really means in Hebrew Har Megiddo, the Mount of Megiddo, which is in Israel. Now, are all these omens, or is it just a tale to tell you at ARE? I don't know. I believe that these are omens.